Hey everybody, welcome to day 32. We're talking about fasting, and it's a spiritual discipline that not a lot of people practice anymore, but there used to be a day and age where a lot of people would fast, and there were good reasons for it. And the Bible talks a little bit about that. Matthew 6:16 through 18 says, "When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show men that they are fasting. But I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to men that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." You might remember that part of that verse from last night for prayer, when it was talking about your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Think about that concept. You know, we can't get away with anything. God knows. God sees us. And He sees what's done in secret. That's the integrity of a person. What do you do in secret? Anybody can put on a front. Anybody can put on a face when they're out and about. But, you know, God sees what's done in the heart and in secret. And so, you know, it's interesting, this principle of fasting. Each of us, you know, does this, fast somehow, some way. Basically, it's a denying of ourselves in order to accomplish some type of goal. You think about this. We're going to develop that idea. But you think about, you know, say you have a huge test that you know you've got to pass this test, and it's a big one. And so you might deny yourself from watching TV, going online, you know, listen to your iPod, texting, calling some people on the phone, whatever, in order to go after this goal of passing this test. You know, if you think about it all throughout your day, you can probably think back on your day and think of some things that you did that denied yourself in order to accomplish this goal. Well, fasting is a lot like that. It's a spiritual concentration. And he says, in this case, you're concentrating your mind, soul, and body to know God and to know His will. And you know, fasting is starting to come back to an understanding spiritually in our disciplines. It's one thing that we need to do. But why? Why do we fast? It's interesting that he tells us back here, people used to fast, you know, back here in the Bible times, and they'd get all, you know, oh, woe is me, I'm fasting, and like they were suffering through it and painful and that kind of thing. And it's interesting, it says when you fast. It's not if you fast, but when you fast. So the first reason we should fast is because God says you need to fast when you fast, okay? And so what is a fast? And that kind of wraps into why we fast. But what do you fast from? We think of food, okay, most commonly. And we know in the scriptures, Jesus fasted for 40 days. And 40 days, He went without food. That's amazing. Now, if you were to fast without food, okay, and go without food, make sure you're drinking plenty of water, okay? That's important. And make sure, you might want to ask your doctor if you're going to go more than a couple of days fasting. Ask your doctor if it's, you know, physically fit for you to do that. But when you fast and you're not eating, you're saying, God, I'm depending on you. And basically, when you get those hunger pains, it's a call to pray and say, God, and you're praying for something specific. I remember in the scriptures there was a time when they came across a demon, and the disciples couldn't cast this demon out. And Jesus said this one needed to come out by prayer and fasting. And so these disciples needed to have these spiritual disciplines in order for this particular demon to come out. But anyway, there's other things you can fast from. You know, your cell phones, computers, internet, Facebook. I know some students through this 40-day journey have fasted from that. Here's the thing. Fasting is not saying no to things that are sin. Okay, if you know that there's a sin in your life and saying, okay, well, I'm not going to do that, that's not fasting. God calls you out of sin, and he tells you to leave that life of sin and strive for the things of Him. So that's not fasting. Fasting is some things that might take away your time and your energy of spending it with God, concentration on God and understanding His will. It says here, fasting may be situational or it may be a habit. Some people fast when they have a major decision to make, when they are confused about God's will, or when they're very discouraged. Their fast concentrates their attention on the Lord and drives them to the Scriptures to discern God's will. Another point on God's will. Think about this. A lot of times we try and go after God's will and search for God's will. I'm not saying that's wrong, but allow God the opportunity to reveal it to you. Okay, remember that. Let's see, going on. Jesus gave 2 simple instructions about fasting. Don't tell anybody, and look good while you're fasting. The Pharisees fasted twice a week, but we get the idea that God wasn't too impressed because they made sure everybody knew it. And so bragging about your spirituality just doesn't cut it. Our natural tendency is to want people to know how incredibly committed we are to the Lord and what shows our commitment more than fasting. Jesus says, don't tell a soul. In fact, make sure nobody can tell you're fasting. And so maybe you want to fast at a meal, maybe at lunch one day. Well, don't go, people saying, why aren't you eating lunch? Oh, because I'm praying to the Lord for this and that. That's not the idea. You kind of want to make it a secret and say, I'm not doing that so that, I'm not eating my meal today because I want to really concentrate and pray during my lunchtime, and that kind of thing. He says here, just say, I'm already full, and you're full on God, right? You don't have to tell him or her that you're full of the love of God unless he asks. Your parents may not understand if you say you're going to miss dinner and breakfast. You might want to tell them you're going to take that time to go to the park, spend time with the Lord, or do something. But if they ask questions about what you plan to eat, it's fine to tell them that you're fasting so you can concentrate on the Lord. That's the kind of thing that can be a witness to your parents. But make sure you obey them. If they're saying, no, you're going to eat here, you're going to eat with us. Hey, honor your parents, because that would be sin if you're disobeying your parents, okay? God's not calling us to sin. What can you expect from fasting? Well, it's not magic. We can't expect God to jump through hoops just because we do something out of the ordinary. Our fasting doesn't twist his arm and get him to do what we want. Fasting doesn't put pressure on God. It clears our minds and hearts so we can be closer to him. In the freshness and intimacy of that experience, we can listen to his word, understand his will, and respond to his love for us. So as you go to your time of journaling, number 1, write a statement on the purpose of fasting. As we just went through this, write the purpose of fasting. And is this purpose different than you thought before? Number 2, do you know anyone who fasts regularly? If you do, what are the benefits to this person? Number 3, have you fasted? What happened? What were the benefits? What obstacles did you encounter? Number 4, are there situations you have experienced recently in which it would have been good to spend more concentrated time with God to discern his will? Number 5, do you want to fast? Why or not? Why or why not? If you do, how and when do you plan to do it? How will you make sure that you do it in secret? And what rewards do you hope God will give you? Number 6, read Matthew 6:16 through 18. Think about these verses and use them as a guide as you pray. Go over the last 3 passages you have memorized: Psalm 116, 1 through 2, Psalm 86, 11 through 12, and Psalm 91, 1 through 3. Try and quote them and see if you have them memorized. All right, that's day 32, day 33 coming up.